Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Dave Bitter, front-end developer at Frontmen, and today I have another Friday tip for you. We're going to have a short look at React Query, which is not just a data fetching library, but far more than that alone. If we head over to the documentation of React Query, we can already see that they say, well, we're not just this missing data fetching library for React, but in more technical terms, we handle fetching, caching, synchronizing and updating server state. So the difficult thing about server state, as opposed to your local state in your application, whether a panel is open or closed, is that you have to use asynchronous APIs because the data is not where you are in your browser, but it's on a remote location. There could be shared ownership. So for instance, multiple people can alter the state of the data. And you need to synchronize that again. But because of that, the data can potentially become out of date real quick. So, of course, you can write something yourself to fix these issues, but that's not all. You have to worry about things like caching, deduping multiple requests, updating out-of-date data in the background, and all these examples that I mentioned here. So to come up with this unified approach, React Query is used to handle all of that. You can imagine that for doing all of this, React Query offers a lot of functionality. So today we're just going to focus on the first bit, which is actually fetching some data and try to see whether we can update that with an interval. So let's head over to Code Sandbox, where I prepared a short demo. As you can see here, we have a function called app. If we open that, we have our React Query client provider, and it loads this GitHub stats component. If we open that up, you can see that we fetch some data. Based on whether it's loading as an error or no data, we simply display a string for now, and we return the actual JSX markup if we have the data that displays all these stats. So this is a fairly simple request, right? But to be able to know things like whether it is loading, you would create your own use state probably, which you have to manage all the time. Same goes for errors and that type of stuff. So out of the box, you already get all of that done very well by React Query. Another great addition to this is the React Query development tools. So you can imagine trying to keep track of what is fetched and what is still data and all of those things. You want something easy to view that. So we can turn that on by uncommenting these two lines. And if we run this, we see that we have the React Query DevTools here. That's great. So here we have one request that we made over here, which we gave a unique key called repo data. This can of course be whatever you want, but the nice thing about React Query is you give this key and that allows React Query to cache all of your data. So if you fetch this data in multiple places, it only does it once. So let's copy this example component. Call it GitHub stats 2 with the exact same key here, repo data. And if we load GitHub stats 2 here, we can see on the screen it loads it in multiple places, of course. But if we look at the data request, we only fetch it once. And that is because we gave it that unique key. So let's change that unique key to repo data 2. And you can see that it makes 2 requests. So we have both of them here, and we can easily view them, see when they were last updated, see what the data is that we received, and we have some actions which makes it easier to debug. So let's remove this second example that we created and dive a bit more in the use query hook. So as you can see, there are 2 things that we currently pass. First, the key that I just mentioned for caching purposes. But the second one is a function that must return a promise. So here we use fetch to fetch the data, and once it comes back, we turn it into JSON. So this is what you normally do, but you can pass that into use query. So if you want to use something else, for instance, a library like Axios or even GraphQL, you can pass it here into the use query hook. After that, you will receive these values to see whether it is still loading, there's an error, or of course the data. So that's great. Let's have a bit of a deeper dive into this. So we can actually add a third argument. So if we open up an object right here, we can add some configuration information. So let's say you have your own npm package at your office and you want to display the results that we see here, but update it with a certain interval, for instance, every 10 minutes or 20 minutes. What you would normally do is write that logic again on your own, but what we can do here is pass a refetch interval here with a certain amount of time. So for now, I'm just going to do every 3 seconds. If we run this and keep an eye out here, we can see that it refetches it with our interval. So this is great to do just this. But what if you have some user logic where you don't want to run this query? So you can imagine if you have an accordion with multiple of these components, well, the ones that are close, you don't really want to keep on fetching them in the background. So what you can do is say enabled is false. So if we refresh this page, we can see there's no data because this actually didn't run, and in that case we display this string. So you can imagine that here you'll probably check, hey, is this GitHub stats component open? Is it visible to the user? And in that case we put it to true, otherwise false. So these are some simple tools to help you with the fetching of your data and to have control over all of it. And there we have some of the basics of React Query that you most likely need all the time. But of course, there are way more functionalities to be able to fit into this short video. Let's quickly head over to the comparison page where React Query shows what it can do and also compare to other libraries that do similar things. Here we have React Query, SWR, Apollo Client, and React Toolkit Query. So if we have a quick look at some of the stats that are here, we can see that, well, there are quite a few stars if that's what you truly care about. But what I think is very interesting is to have a short look at some of these functionalities. So we just looked at some queries, a bit of caching, the DevTools, and some polling intervals, but it doesn't stop there, of course. So what you can do is difficult things like parallel queries, dependent queries, but also things like paginated queries, infinite queries, so on, so on. This is a big one for me always, which is the scroll recovery. The great thing is that it takes care of things like render optimization and automatically works on garbage collection, which are some of the things you sometimes don't think about enough. Or you don't have the time to implement all of this in an optimal manner. And this is where something like this really shines. Finally, a few things like refetching when the window is back in focus, when the network status changed, some stuff for offline catching, which is at the moment experimental, as well as React Suspense, which is a big addition to React. Great. So if you don't have an immediate idea on how to do all these things, or you simply just don't have the time and resources in your team to do it, this is an excellent option to use in your next React project. If you're interested in some more examples, some more in-depth information about React Query, of course you can look it up yourself, or you can like this video and let me know that you want to have some more videos in the future on some of these specific functionalities. For now, that's all. So as always, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.